Omar Torres. I am a Senior Product Manager for DR as a Service at iLand. And in my role, I have the privilege of working with an amazingly talented and passionate team that lives, breathes, sleeps, and eats all things cloud, from infrastructure to backup to disaster recovery and a lot more. For those of you not familiar with us, so we're a global cloud service provider based out of Houston. We've been in the business now for about 25 years in delivering information technology services. In the last 12 years, we've shifted our focus to 100% cloud in delivering as-a-service offerings. And in those last years have actually successfully positioned ourselves as the industry leader today in disaster recovery as a service. And while I've only been with the company for 10 months, I can tell you it's been already an amazing journey for us. Now, through that journey, it has led us across the globe. So today we operate out of 9 locations spread across 3 global markets. And our partnership with Zerto, our friends at Zerto, has been an instrumental part in our success and our expansion. If you look at the Zerto replication technology platform, how deep its deep integration with the VMware technology such as vSphere and vCloud Director, as well as the extensive APIs that they provide to their community, has been instrumental in our ability to build our cloud platform to deliver the services that we offer to our customers today. Now, what's interesting is that same journey is what's positioned us in the ability to learn a tremendous amount about our customers and what it takes for them to make that journey to the cloud. Whether it's hybrid, whether it's multi-cloud, or whether it's 100% all-in. In some cases, SaaS providers looking for options to host their infrastructure on. In other cases, some organizations looking to lift and shift, because in some cases that can work. In other cases, some customers are just looking to dip their toes, maybe using our cloud storage as an off-site target for their secondary backup copies. But the one thing that we've come to see year after year that's a common approach for a lot of organizations is that first step into the cloud, they leverage DR. Oh, you're good. It's good. Yeah, sorry. I'll keep it on that slide for a second. They use disaster recovery as a service as their first step into adopting the cloud. Now, why is that? What we've found is that disaster recovery as a service presents a perfect opportunity to prove whether or not your applications and your workloads will actually run in the cloud. Right? When you think about it, bringing up all your applications, all your workloads, your virtual machines in a DR target is the perfect chance to test that without any disruption to your normal day-to-day business. You can test out performance. You can test out all the network complexities from a LAN, WAN perspective. You can test out all the management access, all the end user access, right? Once you bring all those environments up, your users need to access that, right? Trying to do that from an IaaS model can be very challenging because it can be very disruptive if something goes wrong, whereas with DR as a service, it's a perfect testing opportunity. And that's why time and time again, we still find DR as a service being that first approach for customers to get to the cloud. Now, that said, it's not easy. There's lots of challenges, lots of complexities. And while the end goal is to make it as simple as push button for the customers, getting there takes a lot. Right now, what I'm going to cover here in the next few minutes is sort of what we've seen as sort of the top 3 challenges that customers go through in complexities and the ways that we're helping with that. But I thought it was good that before we do that, we take a second to just kind of look at the last almost decade now of where DRaaS came from and where it's been, right? So if you look back at 2008, right, very early conceptually, it was really just about, hey, I can switch my operating model from a CapEx to an OpEx model, now leverage cloud infrastructure as a target for DR. And for those of you who've been around long enough, while it was awesome, it was extremely difficult for service providers. A lot of the technologies that we have today simply didn't exist, especially Zerto, right? Completely transformed the market for the service providers to be able to offer that. Skip to 2012, for those who stuck to it, right, we started seeing a major adoption shift. So the early adopters now to the major adopters. We're going into 2015, right, recognized by the industry, by the major analysts such as Gartner and Forrester, to where we are today, right, and what you heard in Zeev's keynote today, which is now it's an integral part of a business strategy. Companies simply can't afford to operate today without having some type of recovery plan in place. And not just saying I have a DR plan, but it's actually integrated into the business, the applications, and how they operate and how they think. Now, like I said, it's not easy getting there, right? So if you look at the top 3 challenges that we've seen a lot of our customers face, this is kind of how I grouped them out. Really, the first one is getting there, that whole onboarding process. And what does that take from conceptualization to the point where you've completed a DR test and you can walk away with the confidence that should you need to execute that DR test, it's actually going to work, and it's going to work within the recovery time objectives and the RPOs that you need to maintain. The second biggest one is creating runbooks. And this is a core part, because at the end of the day, the technology is one piece. But if you don't have the ability to repeatedly run through that process, God forbid, it's 12 months since you did your last test, who's remembering what that whole process looks like? It's very difficult. It needs to be documented well so that when you know you need to act on it, it's going to work as needed. And the last one is application testing. Right, because at the end of the day, when you're an organization, while bringing those VMs and virtual machines and all the servers and the networking is important, ultimately your goal is to bring your business back online. And your business depends on the mission-critical applications that you depend on and your data. So bringing up the environments, not all of it. It's also testing the applications, making sure that work, so that the C-level and the business can return back to normal operations, at least until they can recover from the disaster and fail back. So let's talk about the first piece, the on-ramp process. So for us, we've kind of, with our experience, we've really broken this down into sort of 2 phases. First phase is really during the pre-sales part, right? That's really working with the customer, understanding what the business requirements are so that there's alignment in terms of what the outcome is from a technology and from a solution design. Right? We don't want to go in and start designing something if we don't understand what the business requirements are. So this is a key part. From there, we move into solution design, and hopefully everything lines up, customer signs onto our service. From there, the next step is actually the onboarding phase, and this is where a lot of the work comes into play. Right, this is where we go through the actual service design, finalizing it, going through all the provisioning of storage, compute, networking, integrating the 2 sites, getting replication going. I mean, the list goes on. There's lots of different things that come into play to get to that end goal where you can push that button and actually fail over. Right? And then, once you have the ongoing management, right? Now I highlight these specific sections here because I want you to take note of these because I'm going to cover these more in detail as to how we've innovated with our platform to help simplify some of these key areas in this on-ramp process. So one of the first things we've done is we've developed a tool called iLand Catalyst. So this is an in-house developed application that we've built from the ground up that allows businesses to actually run through the various use case and workload scenarios before you actually make a decision to, in this case, go to disaster recovery as a service. So you can actually use this, collect the data from your production environments, and then run through the scenario. Say, hey, what if I fail everything over? And what if I need 100% performance? What does that resource consumption look like so that it can help you predict the costs with our service? Well, hey, maybe I only want to protect 25%. Maybe only 25% of these VMs make up my mission-critical applications. You can now change the parameters, quickly get a cost estimate, and then understand what that's going to look like, not only from a cost, but also from a performance perspective. We're going to be developing this tool a lot more, and I'll talk about that here in a second, but this is huge in terms of already providing a wealth of information to start simplifying that planning process and what it takes to actually get towards the end goal. This is free, by the way. So even if you're not using our services, if you want to go and download this today, you can actually go online to our website, download this tool, and actually run through those scenarios yourself just to get a sense of what it looks like. Data replication and migration, so data movement. That's another huge piece that can actually add a lot of complexity into that process. The cool thing with Zerto, and I don't know how many are familiar with Zerto's different licensing models, but Zerto has a licensing model called one-to-many, which actually allows you to replicate from a single source site to multiple locations under that single licensing model. And there's a number of unique use cases where that comes into play. These first 2 here, and I apologize for the font. I was working on a Mac, so the Star Trek font decided to come up for some reason. If you look at the first one here, we've got an example where a customer is using Zerto to replicate internally within the same data center, as well as replicating externally to an outside data center. In this case, that can be used for a lot of variety of different use cases. Maybe switching from one stack to another. Maybe they've got two locations pretty close by, and instead of using native array-based replication or vSphere replication, Zerto's the better choice to provide that. So that's one model. Parallel replication is where if a customer needs to replicate to two different locations. So maybe they do replicate to us, but for some reason they have a business requirement where they also want to replicate to another site. Zerto provides that capability. But the one that we're really starting to see heavily used is this third use case, which is serial replication. Now, to be clear, what we're saying is we're not replicating to one site and immediately from there also replicating to the next one. What this use case really presents is more the migration use case. So we see this a lot where customers want to use our infrastructure as a service offering, and they want to move those workloads into our cloud. So we'll use Zerto to replicate it to one of our sites. Once those workloads come online, then we'll replicate to one of our other sites to provide disaster recovery should one of our locations go down. Right? Customers can also use this in a non-cloud model. Maybe they need to move to another data center and then from there replicate to a cloud provider or another DR site. So lots of different methods. It's important to know that Zerto's licensing capabilities, whether you're working with a partner or you're working with a cloud provider, that you have these options, again, when we're talking about that journey and getting to what you're looking for in terms of disaster recovery. Going back to the process, right, we sort of work off these four key pillars, which is really helping guide the customer. And as I mentioned earlier, that's really about understanding what the business requirements are so that we can guide them on the right solution, putting them on the right track before they get started. From there, we work really closely with the customers to help make sure that the integration between the two environments is extremely tight, right? There's lots of complexities there, from storage to compute to networking to applications, et cetera. So having that integration there is key. Then validating all of that, right? At the end of the day, if we onboard and we find that you can't fail over successfully, then all that work up front doesn't matter. It's really at this stage in the validation process that doing DR testing and making sure that it actually works is critical to that process. But then the ongoing management, right? And I'm going to talk about that here in a second. So the ongoing management is one of the things that we've seen a lot of our customers struggle with, which is, hey, we've helped them onboard, we've done DR testing, and then they run off and they do what they do as a company, whether that's building airplane engines or coming up with the next soft drink or manufacturing textile, right? As an organization, as a company, you're in the business of doing what you do as a company, not mitigating risk. And a lot of times we find customers are challenged with, when it comes time to actually exercise a real disaster scenario, it's been months, if not years, since they last tested because they simply don't have the time to focus on that. Right, so one of the things that we've done to help resolve that or help our customers is in developing what we call our autopilot managed recovery services, where not only do we help customers through the onboarding process, but we also manage the failover process for the customers through the life cycle of the service, as well as if your environment changes, right? We know that no company has a static IT infrastructure environment. Maybe your growth is small, but you're always adding more data. Maybe you're deploying new applications, you're adding new virtual machines. We find a lot of times customers forget that those new applications or those new virtual machines that they've added weren't replicated. And it's only when they go to test or they actually have a disaster that they find out they forgot to add that to the service. So with this managed recovery service, now we're watching that and we're taking care of that for the customer, saying, hey, look, we've identified that you've added new workloads. We're going to go ahead and put those on with your approval. We're going to onboard those. We're going to get them replicated. And then we're going to schedule a test with you to make sure that they're integrated as part of your DR tests. So another key piece in terms of simplifying that journey, allowing you as a company to stay focused on what you do best as an organization, again, versus mitigating the risk. This is just some examples of some of the deliverables that we provide, and really the goal behind this is providing customers with deeper visibility. Right? Because now if you've got a service provider that's managing all that for you, it's important that you remain able to understand and see what you're getting as part of the service, which goes back to confidence, making sure that that RTO and that RPO is going to be met if and when you have to exercise. Right, so some of these are, again, these are some examples of some of the deliverables. And from going back here, Our goal with this is to provide access to all of this through our secure cloud console, which I'm going to get into here in a second. But the idea here is not to complicate this, but to make this easy for customers to consume. And we manage and create these documents for our customers. Now, the second main pain point that I talked about earlier, or we showed up there, was the runbooks, right? Runbooks are absolutely important. Again, the technology is one piece, but if you don't have the ability to consistently and repeatedly go through that process, we've seen it time and time again where it just, you end up with either the test failed or an application didn't come up right, or end users came in and couldn't access a certain database. I mean, the list of scenarios goes on and on, right? With what we've built here, this is a screenshot of what our secure cloud console. So this is a management portal that as a customer of our DR service, you have access to log into, be able to manage the entire environment. And in this case here, what we're showing is the runbook capability. Now, the way this works is today, how many of you are using Zerto today for any type of replication, whether it's to your own data center or to a cloud provider? Okay. All right, so we're all pretty familiar with this, right? In this case, I've got 5 VMs. I've got 3 VPGs that are grouping those VMs. I've got 2 domain controllers there. I've got a web server, a database server in the second VPG, and I've got this standalone logging server in that third VPG. We replicate those. They land into corresponding VPGs at the target site. Now, today, if you go to fail that over, you need to have documented somewhere the order in which those protection groups need to come online, right? Because you don't want to start your web app first before ADs come in online. Otherwise, potentially your database services aren't going to start because, in this case, they need Active Directory services to authenticate, right? I mean, there's lots of different scenarios, but the key here is understanding that there's an order that you've got to go through. So what we've done is with our secure cloud console, leveraging all of the APIs that both VMware, vCloud Director, and Zerto provide, we've actually built an orchestration engine on top of Zerto's failover capabilities that allows you to go in, pre-configure an actual runbook orchestration that says, you know what, those VPGs need to start up in a specific order, so that I can guarantee that this is going to start up without having to remember or go back and find a document that I created 6 months ago that's on a file share that I don't even remember where it's at. Here, you log into one place, you go to the runbooks, you can see them there, and you can execute them as needed when you need to. And you can build multiple runbooks so that, hey, maybe I just need to bring up one application. These are the 3 VPGs for that one application, but maybe I need to test out bringing up the entire infrastructure. So maybe there's 20 VPGs, and I need to set the right order behind that. This tool allows you to do that. So again, it's going back to simplifying that process for our customers. This is an extended example of with our autopilot managed recovery services. We understand that bringing up that infrastructure is only one part of being able to truly recover from a disaster. Right? We start getting into application testing. So once you've brought that up, now you need application owners, database owners to start coming in and actually testing to make sure that those applications actually work. So today we provide a documented way to manage that for our customers to give them guidance. One of the things that we're working on now, this is sort of a pet project of mine, we're really excited about, is the ability to now actually provide some orchestrated application testing within that runbook capability. So that's what we're calling today Project Jupiter. You're going to hear more about this if you follow us. But this is pretty exciting for us because this is the ability to take that whole automation and simplification process one step further, where now you'll be able to say, hey, look, I need to run a script. After those VPGs have started up, I need to run a process that goes and does transactional testing or checks my database, et cetera, et cetera. So again, one more step towards how we innovate towards simplifying that whole process. And here's just a list of some other areas that we're innovating on today. So application dependency mapping. How many of you doing any of application dependency mapping today as part of your DR's capabilities? Yeah, so this is huge, right? Because we've seen it time and time again where a customer goes to test and, oh, wow, I totally forgot that we needed those 2 other app servers that were in another VLAN, right? Now, hopefully you're lucky enough to discover that as part of a test, not when you actually needed it, right? And now you're down longer, and then you've lost those VMs, and in some cases you may have to rebuild them, right? So one of the things that we're going to be doing is building application dependency mapping into that iLand Catalyst tool that I mentioned earlier, where with that, not only are you going to be able to gather information, the size, the performance, and the costs, but you're actually going to be able to get an understanding of, hey, if I want these 5 mission-critical applications to be recovered and protected, what are the other possible dependencies in my infrastructure that I'm not aware of that I need to account for if I really want to make sure that that's recoverable properly? Another area of innovation that we're working on is called visual mode, and this is basically a visualized method of being able to show how your environment fails over from one site to another. Again, this is something that will be presented through that single management console, the secure cloud console that I mentioned earlier. VDI access, so we've seen lots of situations where customers are very interested and excited about moving to a DRaaS model, but they've deployed a significant VDI infrastructure for all their users to access applications that without being able to fail that over, it's impossible for them to really leverage the capabilities of DRaaS. So we're working on implementing that capability so that those customers who have deployed a virtual desktop infrastructure can also replicate, fail those over, and bring them up with the rest of the infrastructure as needed. Automated security scanning. So and I've got a last slide here coming up where we've got a list of different security services that we've built into our platform so that once you do fail over, and maybe you don't have all the security applications or systems, in some case maybe some physical systems that just aren't present, we offer a whole list of security services that are already integrated into the platform at no additional cost that you'll be able to use. And one of the things that we're looking at is automating that further so that say, hey, once I failed over, I want to make sure that every month or every week that we're running a security scan, whether it's malware, antivirus, et cetera, in the platform built in without you having to invest in additional software and manage it, already integrated into the platform. And then last, from a multi-cloud perspective, right, we know that customers are looking at this, right? And some customers are already doing this. In some cases, typically running certain workloads or applications in a public cloud environment. We understand that if a customer wants to leverage us for DRaaS, we need to provide connectivity, in most cases low latency connectivity to where those workloads run in the hyperscalers. So if you look at any of our locations today, we partner with a number of different carriers where we can provide very low cost 1 gig or 10 gig low latency connectivity into, say, an Amazon VPC instance or into an Azure tenant, right? So that if you do have workloads out there, when you fail over your on-prem infrastructure to us, those environments will still be able to access those applications and workloads that you're hosting in the public cloud service providers. And this last slide here, just going a little bit more into detail around some of the security components that I mentioned earlier. So this is just showing an example of all the various network, data, and access security components that we provide. So we're leveraging a number of different technologies such as Nesys, VMware NSX for a lot of the networking, edge security, and routing. And then as well as HITRUST, if any of you heard of them, in terms of data encryption. So if you need to encrypt virtual machines that you're hosting with us as part of that replication service, we can provide encryption for those as well. So three key points I want you guys to walk away with today. The first big one is before you embark in that cloud journey, right, set goals. Understand what you're trying to get to first. Just don't jump into it. All right, there's a lot that goes behind it, and if you haven't used DRaaS or any type of as-a-service offering today, while the end goal may be easy once you get there and it's easy to consume, you're not having to manage it, getting there takes a lot of planning. And to plan that, you've got to understand what the goals are and where you're trying to go. The second biggest piece, and I mentioned this earlier, is understand the business requirements. As IT folks, it's important to understand what is the business truly trying to achieve here. Is it trying to lower costs? Is it trying to get the IT team to spend more time on business innovation and less on day-to-day lights-on operations? Or is it a combination of both? Right? Understanding that is going to allow you to set the right goals, to set the right plan, and make sure that you're actually successful in that. Right? And the last piece is it's a journey. It's just that, it's a journey. There is no end game to this. So when you're looking at service providers or you're looking to step into the cloud, it's important that you look to work with service providers that just don't provide you a stopping point, but actually provide you the tools, the platform, and the services on that entire journey, because it's never ending. And as we see as fast as technology is changing day to day, our businesses are constantly changing. We're constantly having to evolve. And it's important to have a service provider that can evolve with you through that journey. So that's all I've got. If you want to learn more, we've got a lot of resources online. I would love to talk to you. we've got a group in the show floor room at booth 7, so definitely stop by and talk to us. We'd love to talk to you. And then last, I've just got to make one announcement that, actually I'm already over time. 5 minutes ago, we were all supposed to be over helping pack backpacks for the Project Cure event over, it looks like it's in the hang space. So without further ado, I'll let everyone go, but hope you enjoyed it and hope you guys enjoy the rest of your show. Thanks.